Good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending on where in the world you are joining me from. I am Illuminati, and this is the Crypto and Cognac podcast show, as always, live every Thursday, 7 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. Sharp, we in the Caribbean, baby, and we are checking in. Of course, I'm here. Hennessy is here. Stevie is somewhere there in the comments, of course, checking in. You guys are here. And of course, we are talking crypto. We are trying to decrypt this crazy cryptic world of cryptocurrency, right? But before we get started, as always, a toast, right? I have a little N here of my Carnival limited edition VS. So we're gonna put that all up. We don't waste Hennessy, right? I have a little N here as some VSOP. So we're gonna chase the VS with the VSOP, or we're gonna chase the VSOP with the VS. I mean, however you wanna count it, we're gonna be drinking, right? As always, housekeeping. I am not a financial advisor. This is not a financial advisory podcast. Nothing that I say here this evening or any other evening that is to come or any other evening that has gone by should be misconstrued as financial advice, right? Do your own research. As always, the same way we have the yak is the same way we have our crypto talk. It's all about the ICE rule: information, conversation, education, and sometimes entertainment, right? So, cheers, guys. Remember to drink and degen responsibly. Do not drink and degen, right? You might end up in a bad place. Do follow Stephen and his bad habits. Stevie, what's up, buddy? Yeah, Stephen already calling fit. Ben was asking for 70K. So we're gonna talk about it, right? I mean, we always see this happening, right? But I guess this cycle it feels like it's even more it's even more of a battle though, right? Because we are used to the pull and tug of the bears and the bulls in this market. But usually we have clear signs that we're in a bear market or we're in a bull market and we can respond accordingly. But recently, um, the activities that we've been seeing in the market have left us, what to say, a little bit, I wouldn't say confused, but it could lead us to lean in any which direction. And we've been seeing even the biggest names in crypto, in terms of crypto influencers, have been swaying back and forth as it relates to where we are in the market. So we're going to talk about it, right? Because over the last couple of weeks, over the last week especially, Bitcoin has experienced, significant and notable price movement, right? Obviously influenced by key events across the market, across the world, across the geopolitical sphere, one of which came as recently as yesterday. The Federal Open Market Committee announced its decision to maintain federal fund rates at its current levels. Now, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, he tried to emphasize the strength of the US economy. He spoke about the fact that he thought that the current inflationary experience that we were having was, yes, marked by recent tariffs, but he thought it was transitory. And while this was a bit of a dovish statement or a dovish stance on what is happening, I think he did successfully alleviate some concerns about the aggressive monetary policy tightening um, being reduced. And obviously, we saw the market respond to that. Bitcoin took off for a little bit. We got as high as 86,000 yesterday. We've since kind of come back. But I think the Fed's indication of possible rate cuts later in the year continue to hold some bullish incentives. Um, and I think it's going to continue to fuel positive sentiments in not just the crypto market, but financial markets in as a whole. We're seeing some of the major US stock indices experiencing gains, for example, the NASDAQ. And of course, we in the crypto space have traditionally been correlated with the stock market. And generally, when things are good there, people tend to have a broader appetite for, I guess, alternative assets like crypto. Um, Obviously, Bitcoin has benefited and will continue to benefit from broader market optimism, right? Um, what else happened? We saw reports that crypto exchange Kraken is nearing a deal to acquire U.S. trade retailer Ninja Trader, and I think this acquisition, if it goes through, is going to help kind of reinforce um, the belief that there's growing institutional interest and infrastructure development in the crypto industry as a whole. Obviously, the maturing of the industry is going to help to reinforce investor confidence. I think people are starting to believe that the market is growing towards a level of maturation and stability. Those two things have a lot of good, but for some of us who are in this space hoping to experience continued giant gains, I think maturity and stability are two words that we're not ready to hear just yet. It's these unfortunate violent swings that make the wealth, the generational wealth opportunities that we all kind of anticipate and are hoping for in this market. So, like I always say, volatility is not necessarily a bad word. Um, but yeah, we've shown some resilience over the last week, right? I mean, we opened last week on the 13th at around 82,000, and we kind of hovered in between there. We went up to 86,000. Like I said, we're back down around 84,000. But I think collectively, all of these factors have helped to create a more optimistic outlook for investors. And it has created a little bit of stability. But there is a but. Obviously, we're talking about the bears, we're talking about the bulls. I think on the technical analyst side, there's a perspective that Bitcoin is encountering weak support at critical technical levels. Some people suggesting that Stephen is going to see his 77,000 prediction. Some people see us going as low as 73,000, and they have drawn parallels to what happened in 2021 in terms of the market downturn. So I guess these TA guys, they're all about risk management. They're all about using historical analysis and about being measured in your approach, right? And I mean, we too advocate for that. Again, as I always say, if you're feeling a little uneasy about the volatility in the market or the movements in the market, maybe a little too overexposed, maybe it's time to take some stuff off the board, right? Me personally, I'm not a big I wouldn't say believer, but I'm not a bit. I don't put a huge amount of emphasis on technical analysis, just because I think that technical analysis basically tells you what is happening after the fact based on the sentiment. So I'm a guy who prefer to look at these sentiments in the market, and for that, one of the things that I look at closely is the fear greed index. Um, as earlier this month, we were hovering around the 22, 24 mark in terms of the fear greed index, which indicates significant fear. We can't even pretend. But even that we've seen an uptick in. I think as of today, when I checked earlier today, it stood at 32. By no means referencing that we are in the heat of a bull run, but it means that we're moving in the right direction. They say the trend is your friend until it changes. So for right now, the sentiment is moving positively, and I think it being this low creates opportunities for those of us who want to see opportunities. You don't want to be buying when we at 89, 90 something in the fear greed index. It means that we overheated, and that's when I get scared, and when I think that there's going to be a pullback. Like, some of the old guys in the investment space have always said, be brave when everybody else is being fearful, and be fearful when everybody else is being greedy. So we are 32. You do with that what you may. Of course, we've seen some things happen in the regulatory environment. The SEC has officially dropped its 4-year long lawsuit against Ripple Labs, right? Now, for those of you who've been here for a while, you all will understand and remember that that lawsuit accused Ripple, which is the owners of XRP token being a security offering, right? And a lot of money was spent to defend that position, and the CEO of Ripple obviously is announcing this as a victory. Obviously, the markets have responded. XRP price has surged by as much as 10%, reaching as high as $2.51. And I think this is a good sign for the market in general, because I know a lot of other projects would have been waiting, watching in the wings, to see what happens with this particular case, to see if they have to get their house in order. So I think this being dismissed, or being pulled, I should say, is a huge victory, not just for XRP, but for the crypto market in general. What we know is that traditionally, we do well in this space in the weeks and months after the halving. The halving was a few months ago, and we are still well within the range for uptick. Some of the numbers in terms of predictions have been kind of scaled back, but most people are still calling for $150,000 cycle top. I think we're gonna blow past that. We're probably gonna get just under 200,000. But again, if you are trying to time the market and figure out when that's gonna be, you just might miss it. So they say time in the market always beats timing the market. On the other side, we talked about the ByBit hack that has created some fears around security in the market. But I think overall, because a lot of the funds are traceable, and they've been able to fill their reserves back to their original levels, it's unlikely that the hacker is going to be able to make use of most of those funds. So basically, those funds are burnt, which could only help the market. So we've been here before. We've experienced this before. We've had hacks before. We've had um, exchanges go under before. So I think for the people who've been around for a while, this is just water off a duck's back. But for those who are relatively new to the space, this might be a little bit unnerving. But at the end of the day, this is what we can expect. We have new people coming into the space. We have new people come. This is what adoption does, right? As new people come in, they're gonna have to face the same kind of learning curves. Hopefully, their learning curves aren't as steep, but they're gonna have to learn the same things that we learn. That generally creates the level of belief that we now have, so that they understand that this thing isn't going away. If it didn't die when it was $1, if it didn't die when it was just considered magic internet money, when it was just a bunch of nerds, when it was, just a set of gamblers and degens, and when it was terrorism financing and money launderers and blah, blah, when it was perceived to be all those things, if it didn't die then, bruh, now when some of the biggest players in the traditional financial space are getting involved, that's when you're going to be worried that it's going to blow up. You're crazy. You'll have to be crazy. So for me, we're here for a long time and a good time. So bear market, bull market. We still in a bull market trend. We are still over the previous cycle's all-time high. Until we get back under 69,000, I am calling bull market, bull market, bull market. You understand? Where were you all when we were at 16,000? So why you tripping at 80? Come on. Pull it together, man. We now getting started. We are going to see double this. We had 84,000 today. I think we're going to see double this at minimum, right? I think this is the top minimum is double this. Why? I don't know. I just feel like calling a number, right? I ain't no expert, but that's what I think. So it feels like we're having the same conversation every week, but it's because you'll be blowing up my DMs asking the same smart questions, right? Bitcoin ain't going nowhere. We're here for a good time and especially a long time, right? So, like I say last week, like I'm going to say next week, like I say every week, adoption is inevitable. Do with that information as you may, but adoption is inevitable. 21 million, always and forever. Every single person in this world will have access. We have 8 billion people. 21 million Bitcoin today, yesterday, tomorrow, and every day to come. What do you think happens when that incredibly scarce resource starts to become adopted by all the millionaires, billionaires, companies that are billion-dollar companies, companies that are million-dollar companies, countries, governments? What do you think is gonna happen? That's all I had to say. Guys, as always, thank you for your time. Continue to be blessed. Steve-O, as always, thank you, buddy. Where's that under my nose? I'm out.